An elderly woman left a fortune to her daughter's rival. When the truth about her birth was revealed 30 years later, the mahogany casket stood at the front of St. Matthew's Episcopal Church in Fairview Heights, Connecticut, surrounded by an ocean of white lilies, Grace Williams' favorite flowers. The church was packed with the city's elite, all dressed in black, their whispers echoing off the tall ceilings. Rebecca Williams Porter, Grace's daughter and CEO of Porter Private Banking, sat in the front row, her perfect posture and designer black dress a stark contrast to her tear-stained face. Just as Reverend Thompson began his eulogy, the large screen behind the altar suddenly flickered to life. Everyone gasped as Grace Williams appeared, sitting in her study, looking elegant even in her final days. "My dear friends and family," Grace's voice filled the church, steady and clear. "If you're watching this, I'm no longer with you. But before I go, there's a truth that needs to be told." Rebecca's hands gripped the wooden pew. This wasn't part of the planned service. 30 years ago, Grace continued, I made the hardest decision of my life. I gave up my firstborn daughter for adoption. The church erupted in murmurs. Rebecca's world started spinning. "My beautiful Sarah, if you're here today as I requested through my lawyers, please know that not a day went by that I didn't think of you." The camera panned to show a framed photo of a young woman with Grace's eyes. Rebecca's heart stopped as she recognized Sarah Mitchell, the financial advisor who had started as a janitor in her bank. The woman she'd humiliated countless times was her sister. "Rebecca, my darling," Grace's voice cracked. "You were adopted at age 2, chosen with all the love in my heart. I've kept this secret far too long, trying to protect everyone. But secrets have a way of destroying what we hold dear." Rebecca stood up, swaying slightly. Her son Jason reached for her arm, but she pulled away. Near the back of the church, a slim figure in a simple black dress remained perfectly still, her face pale but composed. "And so," Grace continued, "I've made arrangements. My estate, valued at $50 million, will go to Sarah Mitchell." The crowd gasped. "Rebecca, you've had every advantage, every opportunity. Sarah built herself up from nothing, embodying the values your father Thomas and I tried to instill." Rebecca's knees gave way. Jason caught her before she hit the floor. Through her blurred vision, she saw George Hamilton, her mother's lawyer, approaching with an envelope. "The official reading of the will starts in an hour at my office," he whispered, helping her to her feet. Mrs. Williams was very specific about the timing of everything. "This is ridiculous," Rebecca hissed. "I'm calling our lawyers. That woman is a nobody, a former cleaning lady who got lucky. She must have manipulated Mother somehow." But Grace wasn't finished. "To prevent any challenges to my decision, I've arranged for sealed documents to be opened today that will prove everything I've said. Rebecca, Sarah, you are both my daughters. What you do with this truth is up to you." The screen went dark. In the heavy silence that followed, Rebecca turned to face the crowd, her eyes scanning until they locked with Sarah's. Gone was the timid cleaning lady she'd once mocked. Sarah Mitchell stood tall, her mother's eyes reflecting a strength that sent chills down Rebecca's spine. "This isn't over," Rebecca announced, her voice carrying through the church. Mother was clearly not in her right mind. "I'll spend every penny I have to prove it." As she stormed down the aisle, she heard Sarah's quiet response. "She said you'd say that, Rebecca. She said you'd prove her point exactly." The church doors slammed behind Rebecca, leaving stunned whispers in her wake. Grace Williams' last message had just turned both women's lives upside down, and this was only the beginning. 6 months earlier, Sarah Mitchell knelt in the empty office, washing the floor as she had done every night for the past 3 years at Porter Private Banking. The clock showed 11:30 p.m. Her Yale economics textbook lay open on her cleaning cart. "What's this? Studying on company time?" Sarah jumped at Rebecca Porter's sharp voice. The CEO stood in the doorway, martini in hand, fresh from another charity gala. "I'm on my break, Mrs. Porter," Sarah said, standing up. "Reading about derivatives?" Rebecca picked up the textbook with 2 fingers. "Don't waste your time. People like you clean floors. That's just how the world works." She dropped the book into Sarah's bucket of dirty water. From her office across the street, Grace Williams watched the scene unfold, her heart breaking. She'd arranged the cleaning job for Sarah through a series of anonymous connections, wanting to keep her firstborn daughter close while maintaining her distance. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Yale's financial aid office with her soaked textbook. "I'll work extra shifts," she pleaded. "I can't lose this scholarship." "That won't be necessary," the administrator said. "An anonymous donor has paid your full tuition." Grace watched from her car as Sarah emerged from the building, crying with relief. 3 years later, Sarah graduated summa cum laude. She landed her first client through sheer determination, helping a small business owner secure crucial funding after major banks, including Porter Private, had turned him down. Rebecca fumed when she heard the news. "Find out everything about this Sarah Mitchell," she ordered her assistant. "No charity case takes my clients." But Sarah's success continued. She developed a reputation for integrity and innovative financial solutions. More clients switched to her firm, drawn by her genuine desire to help rather than exploit. Grace attended every event where Sarah spoke, always sitting in the back, always leaving, before anyone could approach her. Her daughter had become everything she'd hoped: brilliant, compassionate, unstoppable. Then came the evening that changed everything. Sarah was presenting her new community financial literacy program at the Manhattan Financial Club. Rebecca arrived late, interrupting the presentation. "Isn't this precious?" Rebecca announced loudly. "The cleaning lady thinks she can teach us about money." The room fell silent. Sarah gripped the podium. "Mrs. Porter," Sarah replied calmly, "I may have cleaned your floors, but I never took advantage of my client's trust. Can you say the same?" Rebecca's face reddened. "How dare you? I'll destroy you." "You can try," Sarah said. "But I have something you don't. Nothing left to lose." Grace, watching from her usual back row seat, felt her chest tighten. She'd tried to protect both daughters, but Rebecca had become everything she'd feared: entitled, cruel, empty inside. That night, Grace called her lawyer. "It's time," she said. "Prepare the documents. They need to know the truth." As she hung up, Grace glanced at the photo on her desk. A young woman holding a newborn baby, tears streaming down her face. She'd kept her promise to give the child a better life. Now it was time for Sarah to receive everything she deserved. What Grace didn't know was that Rebecca had already hired someone to investigate Sarah. The truth would emerge sooner than she planned, with consequences no one could predict. Fairview Heights, 1992. Grace Williams sat in her father's study, her hands protectively covering her stomach. At 23, her pregnancy threatened everything her wealthy family had built. "This is unacceptable," her father declared. "Think of our reputation. Who's the father?" "It doesn't matter," Grace replied. "I'm keeping my baby." "No, you're not." Her father slammed his fist on the desk. "Either terminate this pregnancy or you'll be cut off. No inheritance, no trust fund, nothing." That night, Grace packed a small bag and left. She found work as a secretary at Williams Investment Group, where Thomas Williams, 40 years old and already a millionaire, took notice of her. "I know about the baby," Thomas said one evening, closing his office door. "I have a proposition. Marry me, and I'll take care of everything." Grace hesitated. "Everything?" "The child will be adopted by a good family. You'll have security, position, respect. In time, we can adopt our own child." Grace thought of her empty bank account, her parents' threats. "I need to know my baby will be safe." "You have my word," Thomas promised. 2 months later, Grace held her newborn daughter for one precious hour before the adoption agency took her away. Thomas kept his promise. The baby went to a good home. Grace never saw her again. "Time to move forward," Thomas said at the hospital. "The papers are signed. It's done." Grace nodded, but something inside her died that day. They adopted Rebecca 2 years later. Grace threw herself into motherhood, but she never forgot her firstborn. Without Thomas knowing, she started helping other single mothers in crisis. It began small: anonymous deposits to help with rent, medical bills paid quietly, jobs arranged through careful networking. Over the years, Grace built a secret network of support that helped hundreds of women keep their babies. "Where does all your charity money go?" Thomas asked once, reviewing their accounts. "Women's causes," Grace answered vaguely. He never questioned further. But Grace never stopped searching for her daughter. Every few years she hired private investigators, always hitting dead ends. What she didn't know was that Thomas had people making sure those searches failed. "The adoption records are sealed," Thomas's lawyer would report. "Nothing can be done." Grace eventually discovered Thomas's deception through a sympathetic clerk at the adoption agency. But by then, Thomas had terminal cancer, and Grace chose to keep her knowledge secret. On his deathbed, Thomas made a final confession. "I know you never stopped looking for her," he whispered. "I'm sorry, Grace. I thought I was protecting our family." Grace held his hand. "You were wrong, Thomas. Family isn't about protecting reputations. It's about love, unconditional and true." After Thomas died, Grace intensified her search. When she finally found Sarah working as a janitor to pay for college, she knew she had to make things right. But it had to be done carefully, or Rebecca would never understand. "Your time is limited," her doctor warned after her own diagnosis. "Are you sure about this plan?" Grace nodded. "My girls need to know the truth, but more importantly, they need to learn what family really means." She began writing letters, recording videos, and arranging her estate. Everything had to be perfect. Her daughter's future happiness depended on it. Back at Porter Private Banking, Rebecca paced her office. "Find something on her. Anything." Frank Morris, her private investigator, spread files across her desk. "Sarah Mitchell's background is clean, too clean. Nobody's that perfect. Dig deeper." "There's one thing," Frank hesitated. "The adoption records from the agency are sealed, but I found a former employee willing to talk. For a price." Rebecca wrote a check. "Make it happen." Meanwhile, Sarah's community financial program was gaining national attention. Local news stations covered the story of former clients whose businesses thrived under her guidance. "Ms. Mitchell's program taught me to manage my shop's finances," a small business owner told reporters. "Now I'm opening a second location." Grace watched the coverage from her hospital bed, smiling. But her joy was short-lived when her phone rang. "Mrs. Williams," Frank Morris said, "I'm investigating Sarah Mitchell. I know you've been watching her." Grace's hand trembled. "How much do you want?" "Actually, I want the truth. These hospital records show you're dying. Whatever game you're playing with Sarah Mitchell, it ends now." Grace hung up and called her lawyer. "Move up the timeline. They're getting close." Across town, Frank met with Margaret Wells, the former adoption agency employee, at a diner. "I remember that case," Margaret said. "The birth mother was from money, the father unknown. But here's what's interesting. Someone's been blocking access to those records for years." "Who?" "Thomas Williams. He paid a fortune to keep them sealed." Frank's eyes widened. He called Rebecca immediately. Rebecca stormed into her mother's hospital room that evening. "Thomas wasn't my real father, was he?" "Sit down, Rebecca. Answer me." "No, he wasn't. We adopted you when you were 2. Rebecca collapsed into a chair. "Why tell me now? Because of her? Because it's time you learned the truth about family." "Family?" Rebecca laughed bitterly. "You're leaving everything to a stranger." "Sarah's not a stranger. She's your sister." Rebecca stood up. "I'm contesting the will." "You'll lose," Grace said quietly. "I've documented everything. Your harassment of Sarah, the clients you've threatened, the offshore accounts. You're bluffing. Check your phone." Rebecca's phone buzzed with an email. Files, recordings, bank statements, years of evidence. "Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm trying to save you, Rebecca. From becoming what I almost became, someone who chose money over love." That night, Sarah received a call from an unlisted number. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Frank Morris. There's something you need to know about your adoption." Before Sarah could respond, her office alarm went off. Someone had broken in. She called security, but by the time they arrived, her files were gone. On her desk lay a note. "Back off, or everyone learns your secret." Sarah picked up the phone and dialed Grace's lawyer. "Tell Mrs. Williams I'm ready to talk." What Sarah didn't know was that Rebecca had already set another plan in motion, one that would put Sarah's life at risk. Jason Porter sat in Sarah Mitchell's office, fidgeting with his college application. "Mom doesn't know I'm here." "Why did you come?" Sarah asked, noticing how the 16-year-old's eyes matched Grace's. "Your program helped my friend's family save their restaurant. I need someone to review my Yale application essay. It's about wanting to make a difference in finance, not just make money." Sarah felt a familiar ache as she recognized Grace's gentle expression in the boy's face. "Your grandmother went to Yale." "Really? Mom never mentioned that." Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Stay away from my son, or everyone learns about your time in juvenile detention." Sarah's hand trembled. That record was sealed. She'd been 13, stealing food when the orphanage couldn't afford meals. Meanwhile, Grace's lawyer delivered a letter to Sarah. Inside was a photo of young Grace holding a baby. "Dear Sarah," the letter began, "by now you know you're my daughter. What you don't know is how hard I fought to keep you." Sarah read about Grace's struggle, Thomas's manipulation, and years of secret searching. "I watched you graduate high school from my car," Grace wrote. "I saw you working nights to pay for college. Every time Rebecca hurt you, I wanted to intervene, but Thomas had too much power." The letter revealed Grace's secret network of helping other mothers. "I couldn't save you, so I saved others. The money I leave you isn't just wealth, it's a mission." A knock interrupted Sarah's reading. Jason stood there, pale. "I overheard Mom on the phone. She's planning something dangerous." "What do you mean?" "She hired someone to tamper with your car. You can't drive it." Sarah called the police, but by then, her brakes had already been cut. The detective showed her security footage of someone in a Porter banking uniform near her car. Rebecca burst into Sarah's office an hour later. "How dare you turn my son against me?" "I didn't. He came to me because he has Grace's heart, not your anger." "You have no right to mention her name." "I have every right. She was my mother too." Rebecca laughed coldly. "A mother who abandoned you? Who chose me instead? Is that what you think? Read this." Sarah handed over Grace's letter. Rebecca's hands shook as she read. "Thomas blocked her searches? He knew about you all along?" "He knew everything. He kept us apart because he thought money and status mattered more than love." "Just like I've been doing," Rebecca whispered. "Mrs. Porter," Sarah's assistant interrupted. "The SEC is on line 1. They're asking about offshore accounts." Rebecca's face went white. "They'll destroy the bank." "Not if we work together," Sarah said. Grace knew this day would come. She left us both a choice. Continue Thomas's legacy of secrets and greed, or build something better. Together. Rebecca stared at the letter, seeing her mother's words with new eyes. But before she could respond, her phone rang. The hospital was calling about another woman claiming to be Grace's daughter. The circle wasn't complete yet. Sarah sat at her desk, staring at the financial documents spread before her. The numbers didn't lie. Porter Private Banking had been running a massive fraud scheme for years, hiding losses through a complex web of offshore accounts. "This goes back to Thomas's time," she muttered, tracing the transactions. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Jason. "Mom's been in meetings all day with the board. She's scared." Sarah pulled up Porter Bank's client list. Thousands of families, small businesses, and charities would lose everything if this became public, including Grace's secret network of mothers. Rebecca stormed into Sarah's office unannounced. "I know what you found. Did you know about this?" "Not at first. When I discovered it, Thomas was dying. He made me promise to protect his legacy." "His legacy is a lie." Rebecca slammed her hands on the desk. "If you expose this, you'll destroy more than just me. Think about the depositors, the employees, your precious community programs. There's already an SEC investigation. Which is why I'm here." Rebecca pulled out a document. "Grace left conditions for your inheritance. You only get the money if Porter Bank survives. Sarah scanned the paper. Grace had tied everything together: the bank, the inheritance, her network of charities. One couldn't fall without taking down the others. She knew, Sarah realized. She knew about the fraud all along. Of course she knew. Why do you think she built that secret network? She was trying to balance Thomas's wrongs with her own rights. The door opened. Jason walked in. I found something else. Both women turned. Jason held up his phone, showing emails between Thomas and the adoption agency. Grandfather didn't just block Grace from finding Sarah. He threatened to expose everyone she helped if she ever told the truth. That's why she waited, Rebecca whispered. She was protecting them all. Sarah's computer chimed. The SEC had scheduled a formal investigation for the following week. We have 5 days, Rebecca said. Help me save the bank, or everything Grace built dies with it. Why should I trust you? Because Grace did. Read the final condition. Rebecca pointed to the bottom of the document. Sarah read aloud. My daughters can only access their inheritance by working together. The truth will either unite or destroy you both. Choose wisely. Rebecca's phone rang. The hospital again. Ms. Porter? We need you to come in. We've confirmed the DNA test. Emma Stewart is your half-sister, and she needs an urgent bone marrow transplant. Sarah and Rebecca locked eyes. Another piece of Grace's puzzle fell into place. Did you know about her? Sarah asked. No, but I'm starting to understand Mother's plan. She's forcing us to choose family or fortune. We need both, Sarah said, and we have 5 days to figure out how. Jason stepped forward. I have an idea, but you'll both have to trust each other. Neither woman spoke. Outside, police sirens wailed toward Porter Bank. Time was running out. The SEC investigation starts tomorrow, Sarah announced to the packed conference room at Porter Bank. We have 2 choices, come clean or cover it up. Rebecca paced near the window. If we come clean, everyone loses everything. If we don't, we're no better than Thomas. Jason pulled up Grace's records on the projector. Look at this. Grandmother documented every transaction, every cover-up, but also every person she helped. The evidence was overwhelming. Thomas had used the bank to hide losses, while Grace secretly redirected funds to help struggling families. Sarah's phone buzzed. The hospital. Emma's condition was worsening. She needs the transplant this week, Sarah told Rebecca. We're both matches. The SEC won't let us leave the country if we're under investigation. Sarah stood up. Then we make our choice now. She walked to the podium and pressed the intercom button. Attention all Porter Bank employees. This is Sarah Mitchell. In 1 hour, I'm holding a press conference to expose everything. Rebecca grabbed her arm. You'll go to prison. Maybe, but Emma lives, and Grace's mothers keep their support. There's another way, Jason interrupted. He pointed to a hidden clause in Grace's documentation. Grandmother created a legal foundation years ago. If we transfer the bank's assets there before the SEC arrives, the foundation could protect the depositors, Sarah realized. And maintain the support network, Rebecca added. Sarah faced the board members. We need unanimous approval. Now. One by one, they voted yes. Rebecca signed the transfer papers with shaking hands. Outside, reporters gathered. The SEC cars pulled up. Sarah stepped to the microphones. Today, Porter Private Banking becomes the Grace Williams Foundation. Our mission, supporting families in crisis while maintaining ethical financial practices. The SEC agents stormed in, but the damage was already done. The bank was gone, transformed into something new. That evening, Sarah and Rebecca sat by Emma's hospital bed. The doctors say the transplant can happen tomorrow, Emma whispered. Why are you helping me? Rebecca took her hand. Because we're family, and we finally understand what that means. Sarah's phone rang. The SEC wanted to question her about the bank's transformation. Go, Rebecca said. I'll stay with Emma. For once in my life, I'm choosing family over money." Sarah paused at the door. Grace knew this would happen. She forced us to choose between protecting wealth and protecting people. "She taught us what Thomas never could," Rebecca replied. "That true wealth isn't in bank accounts." As Sarah walked toward the waiting federal agents, she smiled. Grace had won. The money was gone, but something more valuable had taken its place. The real work was just beginning. The charges against Rebecca Porter include fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, the federal prosecutor announced. She faces up to 30 years in prison. Sarah watched her sister being led into the courtroom in handcuffs. The media frenzy outside had reached fever pitch. "We can still protect Jason," Sarah told Rebecca's lawyers, "if we prove he had no knowledge of the fraud." "What about Mom?" Jason asked from the gallery. "We can't let her go to prison." Sarah pulled out Grace's final documents. There might be a way. Grace documented everything Thomas did, including proof that Rebecca was coerced into continuing his schemes. The prosecutor reviewed Grace's evidence. "This changes things, but we still need someone to take responsibility." "I will," Rebecca announced. "But I have conditions. The foundation stays intact. The support network continues, and my son remains protected." Sarah stood up. "Add one more condition. Rebecca joins the foundation's board after serving community service. Her financial expertise could help more families." The judge considered the proposal. 6 months house arrest, 5 years probation, and mandatory service at the foundation. "Miss Porter, do you accept these terms?" Rebecca nodded. "I do." Meanwhile, Emma's transplant had succeeded. She was recovering in the hospital when Sarah brought her Grace's diary. "She knew about you too," Sarah explained. "Your adoption was arranged through her network. She made sure you had health care your whole life." Emma read the diary entries. "She watched over all of us, didn't she?" "In her own way," Rebecca added, entering under guard supervision. "She was trying to fix everyone's lives except her own." Jason arrived with more of Grace's papers. "Look what I found." Grandmother had a plan for the foundation all along. She mapped out programs for education, health care, housing, and financial support, Sarah finished. She wanted to combine Rebecca's banking skills with my community work. Rebecca studied the plans. This could actually work. Legal microloans, financial education, health care funds. But why didn't she tell us while she was alive? Emma asked. Because we wouldn't have listened, Rebecca admitted. We had to lose everything to understand what really matters. Sarah's phone buzzed. The foundation's first official board meeting was starting. "Coming?" she asked Rebecca. "Can't. House arrest, remember?" "Actually," Sarah smiled. The judge approved video attendance. Grace thought of everything. As they set up the video call, Jason showed them one last document. Grace had recorded every attempt she made to reunite her daughters, every obstacle Thomas created, and every plan she developed to make things right. "She spent 30 years planning this," Jason said. "Making sure we'd all find each other. And fixing the mess Thomas and I made," Rebecca added. The foundation's board members appeared on screen. Among them were faces they recognized, women Grace had helped over the years, now successful and ready to help others. Sarah opened the meeting. "Welcome to the first official gathering of the Grace Williams Foundation. Let's make her proud." 3 months after Emma's successful transplant, the Grace Williams Foundation opened its doors. "Our first goal is to help single mothers keep their children," Sarah announced to the staff, "just like Grace wanted to keep all of us." Rebecca joined via video from home detention. "We've identified 50 families in immediate need. The foundation can support them all." "That's not enough," Emma said. She'd recovered fully and now ran the healthcare division. Grace helped hundreds. "We need to think bigger." Jason pulled up the foundation's new website. "Look at these applications. Over 1,000 mothers seeking help in just 1 week." Sarah studied the numbers. "If we use Grace's original network—" "Already done," Rebecca interrupted. "I've contacted every woman she helped. 90% want to give back." Emma checked her tablet. 3 have offered to open their homes to mothers in crisis. 5 are starting job training programs. And 12 are investing in the foundation, Rebecca added. They believe in Grace's vision. A notification popped up on Sarah's screen. The SEC had approved their new financial structure. The foundation could now offer microloans and financial education nationwide. There's something else, Jason said. He opened Grace's final letter. She left instructions about the Porter Bank building. Sarah read aloud. Convert it into a community center. Childcare on the first floor, job training above, housing assistance in my old office. Where Thomas hoarded wealth, help others create it. Rebecca wiped her eyes. She's still teaching us, isn't she? Teaching everyone, Emma corrected. Look, the local news was running a story about the foundation. Former Porter Bank clients were praising the transformation. Community leaders pledged support. This is bigger than us now, Sarah realized. It's what Grace always wanted, people helping people. Rebecca's phone rang. The judge had reviewed her community service reports. Ms. Porter, your dedication to the foundation is commendable. We're converting your house arrest to community service full-time. Thank you, Your Honor, but I'm not doing this for legal reasons anymore. After the call, Sarah showed everyone Grace's diary. Listen to this entry from 1992. Today, I lost my baby, but someday I'll create a way for other mothers to keep theirs. This pain will have purpose. It already does, Emma said softly. Look around. The foundation's offices buzzed with activity. Former bank employees worked alongside social workers. Financial advisors trained community volunteers. Jason stepped to the window. Grandmother's watching this, isn't she? Yes, Rebecca answered. And for once, I think we're making her proud. Sarah opened Grace's old ledger. She tracked every dollar she secretly gave away. Now we can do it openly. And legally, Rebecca added with a small smile. The intercom buzzed. The first group of mothers had arrived for the foundation's inaugural program. Ready? Sarah asked her sisters. They nodded. Grace's legacy was just beginning. 1 year after Grace's death, the Grace Williams Foundation celebrated its first anniversary in the renovated Porter Bank building. Over 500 families helped, Sarah reported to the packed community center. 200 children who got to stay with their mothers. 100 small businesses saved. Rebecca, now free of house arrest, stood beside her sister. And 0 foreclosures on our watch. The numbers tell only part of the story, Emma added. She gestured to the crowd. Look around. The audience included mothers and children from the foundation's programs, former bank employees, and community leaders. Many were crying. Maria Rodriguez stepped to the microphone. Last year, I almost lost my children. The foundation gave me housing, job training, and hope. Today, I own a successful catering business. Jason, now a freshman at Yale, managed the foundation's student volunteer program. We're expanding to 3 more cities next month. Following Grace's blueprint exactly, Rebecca said. She mapped out a 10-year expansion plan. Sarah opened another of Grace's notebooks. She even predicted which communities would need help first. The foundation had transformed the banking floor into a childcare center. Upper floors housed job training programs and emergency housing. Grace's old office became a counseling center. Remember what this place used to be? Rebecca asked Sarah. Hard to forget. I cleaned these floors. And now you run them. Emma joined them, holding more of Grace's papers. Found something interesting. Grace left instructions about Thomas's old office. They read the note together. Convert this space where greed lived into a place of giving. Let my daughters teach others what Thomas never learned, that true wealth grows by sharing. Rebecca touched the wall. I spent years here chasing the wrong things. We all did, Sarah said. But Grace knew we'd figure it out eventually. The elevator opened. A young mother emerged with twins. The daycare center said you could help with housing? Sarah smiled. Of course. That's why we're here. Jason updated the foundation's records. That's family number 501. Grace would love this, Emma said. Her office saving another family. Rebecca checked her phone. The foundation's new financial literacy program had just received federal approval. Soon they could help families nationwide. Starting to understand why she left us the money this way? Rebecca said. She knew fixing. Her past meant fixing our future. Sarah watched the young mother fill out forms. Grace lost one child and spent her life making sure other mothers wouldn't have to. And brought her own children together in the process, Emma added. The sisters looked around the transformed building. Where wealth was once hoarded, hope now grew. Where greed once ruled, grace now guided. To Grace, Rebecca said softly. To Mom, Sarah and Emma answered. Above them, Grace's portrait watched over her greatest legacy, not the money she left, but the family she built, one act of kindness at a time. 2 years after Grace's passing, the foundation held its national awards ceremony. The Grace Williams Achievement Award goes to Maria Rodriguez, Sarah announced. Her catering business now employs 15 single mothers. The audience erupted in applause as Maria took the stage. Her children watched proudly from the front row. Rebecca, now the foundation's financial director, presented the next award. Our Business Innovation Grant goes to the Mothers Support Network, providing childcare for women starting small businesses. Emma managed the healthcare initiative from her office in Chicago. We've opened clinics in 5 states, she reported via video. Every mother gets care, no questions asked. Jason, finishing his junior year at Yale, had expanded the college program. 300 scholarships this year, he announced. Grace would have loved seeing these women graduate. Sarah opened Grace's final diary, discovered in a hidden safe. Listen to her words from 20 years ago. Today, I helped another mother keep her baby. Someday, everyone will understand why this matters so much. The foundation now operated in 20 states. Former Porter Bank clients had become its biggest donors. Remember when you tried to destroy my career? Sarah asked Rebecca during a quiet moment. Every day. That's why I work twice as hard now. Emma joined them, holding a stack of letters. More stories from mothers we've helped. One opened a tech company, another starting medical school. Grace knew this would happen, Rebecca said. She saw the potential in everyone. The ceremony continued with videos from across the country. Women sharing success stories. Children thriving with their mothers. Communities growing stronger. Jason presented the financial reports. We've helped more families in 2 years than Porter Bank helped in 50. Because we measure success differently now, Rebecca explained. By lives changed, not dollars earned. A young mother approached Sarah after the ceremony. I was going to give up my baby, she whispered. Your program saved us both. Sarah hugged her. That's exactly what Grace wanted. Later, the sisters gathered in Grace's old office. Found something else, Emma said, opening a worn envelope. Grace's original letter about giving up her first baby. She wrote, "This pain will create purpose. Someday, my daughter will understand why I had to let her go and what I did with that loss." We understand now, Sarah said softly. Rebecca looked at the transformed building around them. She turned her greatest tragedy into everyone else's second chance. The foundation's new sign glowed outside. The Grace Williams Foundation, keeping families together. Grace's legacy had become more than money. It had become hope. The National Philanthropy Awards ceremony marked 5 years since Grace's passing. The Grace Williams Foundation was receiving the highest honor for transforming American charitable giving. Our mother taught us that true wealth isn't in bank accounts, Sarah began her acceptance speech. It's in the lives we touch. Rebecca and Emma stood beside her on stage. Jason sat in the front row, now a foundation executive after graduating Yale. 5 years ago, we were strangers, Rebecca continued. Enemies even. Today, we stand here as sisters, carrying on our mother's legacy, Emma opened Grace's final letter, never before shared publicly. My dearest daughters, she read. If you're reading this, you've finally understood what I've tried to teach you. Money divides, but love multiplies. The letter revealed Grace's ultimate plan. She had predicted everything: Rebecca's transformation, Sarah's leadership, Emma's healing touch, and Jason's dedication to the cause. "I gave up my first baby," Grace wrote, "because I had no choice. I adopted my second because love knows no boundaries. I found my third because fate has a way of coming full circle. Each of you completed my heart in different ways." Sarah continued reading. "Rebecca, you learned that power comes from helping others, not controlling them. Sarah, you proved that success isn't about where you start, but how many others you lift up along the way. Emma, you showed that healing comes from giving what you once needed yourself." Rebecca wiped tears as she read the final page. "My fortune isn't in the money I leave you. It's in the family you've become, and the families you'll help build. Every mother kept with her child, every family saved from poverty, every woman given a second chance. That's my true legacy." The foundation's latest statistics appeared on screen. 10,000 families helped, 50 clinics opened, $100 million in microloans distributed, 0 defaults. Grace Williams saw the future, the awards presenter announced. She turned a private bank into a public mission, a family fortune into a national movement. After the ceremony, the sisters gathered in Grace's old office, now a museum of stories from families they'd helped. "One last surprise," Jason said, revealing a hidden compartment in Grace's desk. Inside lay a photo album. The first photo showed Grace holding baby Sarah. The last showed all 3 sisters together at the foundation's opening, exactly as she'd planned. "She knew we'd find our way here," Emma whispered. "Because she planned every step," Rebecca added. Sarah touched Grace's portrait. "She built something beautiful from her greatest pain, and taught us to do the same," Rebecca said. The sisters looked out at the city below. The foundation's lights glowed against the darkness, a beacon of hope for mothers everywhere. Grace's final words echoed in their hearts. "Love is the only fortune that grows by giving it away. That's the greatest inheritance I could leave you. That's the American dream I always believed in." Previous content remains the same through Grace's final words echoed in their hearts. "Love is the only fortune that grows by giving it away. That's the greatest inheritance I could leave you. That's the American dream I always believed in." That evening, the foundation hosted a gala, celebrating not just the award, but the thousands of lives changed. Maria Rodriguez had catered the event, her business now employing 30 single mothers. Her oldest daughter had just received a foundation scholarship to medical school. "Look what arrived," Emma said, holding up a letter. It was from the first mother they'd helped 5 years ago. She now ran 3 successful daycare centers, all partnering with the foundation to provide free childcare to working mothers. Jason brought out Grace's business ledgers from the Porter Bank days. "She tracked every dollar Thomas moved offshore," he explained. "But look at these notes in the margins." The sisters crowded around. In tiny handwriting, Grace had documented every family in need she'd discovered through the bank. Next to each name was a plan. How to help them secretly, how to protect them from Thomas's greed, how to give them hope. She was building the foundation even then, Sarah realized, right under Thomas's nose. Rebecca studied the ledgers. These numbers, she matched every dollar Thomas hid with a dollar given to help others. For 30 years, a young mother approached their table, holding a sleeping baby. "I wanted you to meet Grace," she said softly, "named after the woman who made her possible." Sarah looked at the baby, remembering Grace's words about every child kept with their mother being a victory. The foundation had already helped thousands of Grace's babies, as they'd come to be known. The foundation's legal team arrived with news. Congress had approved nationwide expansion of their programs. State governments were adopting their model for social services. "Grace's vision is becoming national policy," Emma announced to the crowd. Every state, every city, every mother in need, we'll reach them all. Rebecca unveiled the foundation's next phase, international expansion. Starting with young mothers in developing countries, she explained. Grace's dream wasn't limited by borders. The sisters gathered by Grace's portrait. Sarah held up her phone, showing the foundation's latest numbers. 1 million families helped by 2030, she read. Grace thought big, didn't she? She thought with her heart, Emma said, and taught us to do the same. Jason brought out one final surprise, a video Grace had recorded just before her death. The room fell silent as her image appeared on screen. My darling daughters, Grace began, if you're watching this, you've exceeded every hope I had for you. You've learned what Thomas never could, that true wealth isn't in what we keep, but in what we give. She spoke directly to each of them. To Rebecca about finding purpose in service, to Sarah about using her success to lift others, to Emma about healing her own wounds by helping others heal theirs, to Jason about carrying their legacy forward. I lost 1 daughter and gained 3, Grace continued. I lost a fortune and created something priceless. My greatest achievement isn't the money I leave you. It's the family you've become and the families you'll help build. The video ended with Grace's smile. Around the room, mothers held their children closer. Former bank. Employees wiped tears. Community leaders nodded in understanding. Rebecca stood to make an announcement. In honor of our mother, we're creating the Grace Williams Lifetime Achievement Award. The first recipient is Maria Rodriguez for embodying everything our mother believed in. Maria accepted the award through tears. 5 years ago, I was cleaning offices at night, just like Sarah once did. Today, my business helps other mothers build their dreams. That's Grace's legacy. The foundation's new mission statement glowed on the wall. Every mother matters. Every family counts. Every dream deserves a chance. Sarah looked at her sisters, at Jason, at the room full of lives transformed. Grace didn't just leave us a fortune, she said. She left us a purpose. And taught us the true meaning of wealth, Rebecca added. And family, Emma finished. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars. Inside the former bank where Thomas once hoarded wealth, Grace's legacy flourished. Not in dollars and cents, but in lives changed, families united, and dreams made possible. The sisters had learned their mother's final lesson. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the hearts touched and the hopes restored. Grace's fortune hadn't just changed their lives, it had changed their definition of fortune itself. And somewhere they knew Grace was smiling. As the awards ceremony concluded, Maria Rodriguez approached the sisters with tears in her eyes. There's something I never told you, she said. 25 years ago, your mother helped my mother keep me. That's why I had to succeed, to honor her faith in us. The revelation sparked a wave of similar stories. Throughout the evening, guests came forward with their own connections to Grace's secret network. A judge revealed her mother had been helped by Grace. A congressman shared how Grace's aid had kept his family together. The ripples of her quiet work had spread further than anyone imagined. We need to document all of this, Sarah said. Every story, every connection. Emma was already working on her tablet. I'm creating a database. We can trace Grace's impact across generations. Jason brought out a stack of old photographs he'd discovered in the bank's archives. Each showed Grace at different charity events over the decades, always in the background, always watching over the families she'd helped. Look at this, Rebecca pointed to a particular photo. That's Thomas's retirement party. But look in the corner, Grace is talking to a young mother. I remember her. She was the custodian's daughter, who is now the head of pediatrics at City Hospital, Emma added. Grace paid for her medical school. The foundation's legal team arrived with unexpected news. Congress had just passed the Grace Williams Family Protection Act, allocating federal funds to replicate their program nationwide. Mother's vision is becoming national policy, Sarah announced to the crowd. Every state, every city will have these resources. Rebecca unveiled the foundation's next phase, international expansion. Starting with programs in developing countries, she explained. Grace's dream didn't stop at borders. As the evening wound down, the sisters gathered in Grace's old office. The space had been preserved exactly as she left it, but now the walls displayed photos of thousands of families they'd helped. "One more surprise," Jason said, revealing a hidden compartment in Grace's desk. Inside lay a series of letters, each marked with a future date. Emma opened the one marked for that day, exactly 5 years after Grace's passing. "My darling daughters," Grace had written, "if you're reading this, you've exceeded my every hope. You've learned what Thomas never could, that true wealth lies not in what we keep, but in what we give away." The letter outlined Grace's vision for the next decade. Grace houses in every major city, comprehensive centers providing housing, childcare, job training, and financial education under one roof. "The first one opens next month in Chicago," Emma announced. "I've been overseeing the renovations." Sarah's phone buzzed with breaking news. United Nations representatives wanted to study their model for global implementation. "She saw it all," Rebecca whispered. "Everything we're doing. She planned it decades ago." A young mother approached their group, holding a sleeping baby. "I named her Grace," she said softly, "because without your mother, I wouldn't have been able to keep her." The sisters looked at the infant, remembering their mother's words about every child kept with their mother being a victory. The foundation had already helped thousands of Grace's babies, as they'd come to be known. Grace's final letter, marked, "When you understand it all," lay open on her desk. "My beloved family, you've turned wealth into worth, success into service, and loss into love. That's the real American dream, not just climbing the ladder ourselves, but building ladders for others. I gave up my first baby thinking I had no choice. I adopted my second thinking I could fill the void. I found my third thinking it was too late. But God had a bigger plan. Through our pain, we learned to heal others. Through our losses, we learned to help others hold on. The money I left you was just a tool. The real inheritance is in the lives you'll change, the families you'll build, and the love you'll multiply. That's a fortune that never diminishes. Keep building, keep loving, keep giving. And remember, every mother matters, every family counts, every dream deserves a chance. With all my love, always, Mother." Outside the window, lights glowed in Grace House next door, where new mothers were beginning their own journeys of hope. The city skyline, once dominated by Porter Bank's logo, now shone with the foundation's message, "Every family matters." In the end, Grace's fortune had done more than change lives. It had changed the meaning of fortune itself. Her legacy would continue, growing stronger with each family helped, each dream preserved, each circle of love expanded. That was the true American dream, not just success, but significance. Not just wealth, but worth. Not just achievement, but impact. And in that, Grace's daughters had become their mother's greatest investment of all. At that moment, Jason called everyone's attention to a breaking news story on the national networks. The president was announcing a new national initiative, the Grace Williams Family Empowerment Program, with initial funding of $5 billion. "For too long," the president said, "we've measured our nation's wealth by stock markets and GDP. Grace Williams showed us a different way. Today, we're implementing her vision nationwide." Sarah felt her phone vibrating continuously with messages from around the world. The United Nations was calling their model the American Innovation in Social Change. Delegations from 12 countries had already scheduled visits to study the foundation's methods. "Mrs. Porter?" A young intern rushed in with urgent news. The world's largest investment banks were announcing a joint initiative, a $50 billion fund dedicated to supporting Grace houses globally. "They're calling it the Grace Standard," Rebecca explained, reading the press release. "Any bank wanting to be certified must dedicate 10% of profits to family support programs." Emma's healthcare division reported another breakthrough. Major insurance companies were adopting their model of free maternal care, inspired by Grace's vision. "Look at this," Jason said, pulling up global news coverage. Grace's story was trending worldwide. A Grace Effect and Every Mother Matters were the top hashtags globally. Maria Rodriguez stepped forward again, this time with her daughter beside her. "We're opening Grace houses in Mexico," she announced. "My mother's village will be the first location." The ripple effect kept growing. Universities were creating Grace Williams scholarships for children of single mothers. Corporations were implementing Grace-certified family support policies. Local governments were converting abandoned buildings into family resource centers. Rebecca found another hidden letter from Grace, this one marked, "When the world embraces our mission." "My dearest ones," she'd written, "by now you understand that our family's story was never meant to stay within our walls. Every mother's struggle is connected. Every child's future matters. You've broken down the barriers between privilege and need, between giving and receiving." Sarah gathered everyone around as she continued reading. "I dream of a world where no mother faces my choice, where no family suffers alone, where wealth is measured by how many lives we lift. You've made that dream real." The Foundation's Global Impact Report appeared on the screens around them. 1 million families helped. 10,000 businesses launched. 100,000 children staying with their mothers who might have been separated. But it was the individual stories that touched them most deeply. A former Grace House resident now running for Congress. A teenage mom who became a Supreme Court clerk. A refugee family who started a tech company employing other refugees. Grace's legacy isn't just about money or programs, Emma realized. It's about changing how we define success itself. The sisters watched as Grace houses lit up across time zones, New York, London, Tokyo, Sydney. Each one a beacon of hope, each one proving that Grace's vision knew no boundaries. Rebecca's son announced he was leaving his Wall Street career to run the Foundation's global expansion. Emma's daughter had pioneered a new medical residency program focusing on underprivileged mothers. Sarah's mentorship program had spawned a new generation of ethical business leaders. "The circle keeps growing," Sarah said softly. Jason unveiled the Foundation's next phase, a global network connecting all Grace House graduates. "Think of it as a worldwide family," he explained, "supporting each other, lifting each other up." As evening fell, the sisters stood in Grace's old office one last time before it would become a museum celebrating her vision. The space would inspire future generations to see wealth differently, not as something to hoard, but as a tool for change. "She knew," Rebecca said, touching her mother's portrait. "She knew this would grow beyond us." "Beyond money," Emma added. "Beyond borders," Sarah finished. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars. Inside the former bank where Thomas once counted his millions, Grace's true fortune multiplied. In lives changed, in hopes restored, in families united. Her daughters had not just inherited her wealth. They had inherited her wisdom. And through them, that wisdom would keep changing lives for generations to come. For in the end, Grace's greatest legacy wasn't the money she left behind, but the revolution of compassion she began. A revolution that proved the true measure of wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we give. Not in what we keep, but in what we share. Not in what we own, but in who we help. And that was a fortune that would never stop growing.